Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday, October 9th. Welcome to our hands-on live lab today. Welcome back for all you return guests, and welcome to anybody new that's attending. So the goal of our hands-on live lab series is to learn together. At any point, if you have any questions or you would like to see additional clarification or context, please post in the WebEx chat, and I will do my best to relay it to our guest today. So without further any ado, let's get into it. So our guest today is Shoaib Shahapuri, and he has brought one of our new learning paths on wwt.com. Welcome, Shoaib. Tell us about yourself.
Thanks, Brandon, and thanks everyone joining us here today. Whether you have been with us before or this is your first time, I really appreciate you taking the time to be here, right? And hey, honestly, the timing could not have been any better, right? October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and this is a time when the industry experts come together and discuss and plan on how to stay ahead of the adversaries, right? If you see, most breaches in modern day environment do not start by compromising a complex firewall configuration, right? Or using a fancy malware to exploit. They start using far more simpler techniques, like using a misused or a stolen credentials. Imagine this: if an attacker can get hold of a valid credentials, and if they are able to log in, they have already bypassed a lot of defenses, right? And that is why identity is treated as the new perimeter in today's day and age. And the topic that we are discussing today lies at the center of it. We are going to be discussing about detecting identity attacks using ITDR, identity threat detection and response. So you'll be walking through a lab exercise, performing a red team simulation, doing attacks like pass the hash attack, Kerberoasting on the Active Directory. Then you'll be leveraging tools like CrowdStrike and Security Onion to correlate the telemetry from your red teaming exercise, and also try and use the automation to stop the attacks before they have exploited further, right? Before we dive deep into the lab environment, I would like to take this time and introduce myself. Like Brandon mentioned, I am Shoaib Muhammad Shahapuri, Principal Solutions Architect. Sorry about that. Just got promoted yesterday, so still getting used to it.
Yeah, congratulations on the new title as of yesterday, so 12 hours old.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I started here almost 10 years ago as a senior F5 network engineer with the professional services division, and then moved into the app and API security before diving into the broader cybersecurity role, right? And it is this experience over a period of years that has enabled me to create labs and learning paths that help our SOC and SecOps persona, and also helps our go-to-market stuff, right? And the lab that we are doing today uses automation in the background. So it usually takes 5 to 7 minutes for the lab automation to complete, so that it can set up and configure all your lab components, and you have your own lab copy to follow along while we do the lab. So without further ado, let's go ahead and launch the lab, and then we can discuss some of the prerequisites, the learning path, what it does, and also we can discuss about the topology diagram, and then move into the lab exercises, right? Hope everyone is logged into the wwt.com portal. Once you are in here, you can click on my account, and from my account, you can go to my events. Yeah, so once you are in my events, take a look at your workshop, hands-on lab workshop, click there, and you should be taken to this page wherein you can click on the resources, and under the resources, just click on the name of the learning path, which is Mastering Threat Detection and Incident Response. Once you click on the name of the learning path, you should be automatically enrolled into the entire learning path, right? But we will be doing only lab 4 of this learning path today. So this is a lab from the module 4, Exposing Identity Attacks with ITDR. Click on the lab name. For me, it is showing open lab because I've already launched the lab ahead of time to save some time. For you, it should be showing launch lab. So click on launch lab. Once you click on launch lab, it should give you your own environment, right, to execute all the lab steps. And once the lab automation that we discussed about is completed, you will see all the login information for all the devices within the info section of the lab. So just click in here for the info section. So give it some time, like 5 to 7 minutes for the automation to complete, and then you should see all that info logging in, right?
So thanks, Shoaib. We'll just kind of walk through a little bit of clarification. So if you're new to our labs and learning paths on wwt.com, a lab is an environment where you can go and you can get hands-on experience. A learning path is a collection of labs, articles, and videos that all work together in the name of education. If you go all the way to the end of the learning path, there will be a quiz in which you pass the quiz, you can earn a badge, and the badge is represented in your wwt.com profile and can be shared to social media channels as well. So today, as Shoaib pointed out, we are focusing on Module 4 on a particular lab, but please explore the learning path. There's quite a bit of other content that goes around. Question for you, Shoaib. I know we consider it an intermediate level learning path. What are some things people would consider a prerequisite going into this lab? Or so what are some areas to at least be familiar with to help understand the context of today's lab?
Yeah, at least the basic cybersecurity knowledge, right? So this entire learning path is at an intermediate level. So knowing some of the tools that we are using here might, drive home the advantage, right? Tools like IMPacket, like Impacket. We are using some of the tools like CrowdStrike, Onion, right? So having that basic set of knowledge will drive home the advantage. But at the same time, we also use a self-guided lab guide for all our labs that basically does a very well job of explaining all the concepts that are presented within that section of the lab, right? So not to worry if you don't have prerequisites knowledge, but it's always good to have that. So like Brandon mentioned, right? So we also use something called as learning path. And if you go one level top of that, we also have something called as learning series, right? So learning series is a collection of a learning path, which starts at the very basic level, like fundamental level. So we do have a fundamental learning path on this topic, threat detection and incident response, which is a precursor to this learning path, right? So I would highly encourage you to explore that as well. So if you have already gone through that, this will feel like a continuation because we use a persona-based approach to deliver all our content on the threat detection and incident response side. So you'll be able to relate. You'll move into the shoes of a persona yourself and try and see how they are navigating from SOC 1 level to SOC 2 level and so on, right? So and that's the intention about creating a learning series so that you can walk into the shoes of a person and learn it yourself.
Thank you, Shoaib. And just a reminder, so everybody will have access to this learning path being displayed that's in the event today. If you're a customer of WWT, either a customer or partner of WWT, you can explore the entire learning series and really any of our labs on WWT. So to navigate to our lab library, go to wwt.com/labs as a customer, and you will have access to the entire lab library. So
that is right.
Perfect.
Right.
I'm not going to go a whole lot here. Just one more question for you, Shoaib. As you created, what was your inspiration to create this learning path? There's a lot of content here. So what did you have in mind, or what was your goal to education when you went down this path initially?
Yeah, so one of the biggest inspiration for me, I was not, very well expert in this topic myself. So I started, leveraging the content that's available out there on the internet and try and see what best I can make out of it, right? So most of the content I could find was more of, a video and an article in nature, but it did not have that hands-on feeling or hands-on approach to it, right? And most of the content that I was finding was one-off. It did not have that persona feeling where I can, feel myself being part of the use case, being part of the SOC team. That's the reason I thought, why not, make a learning path myself, which can bring out the personas alive and help me, walk through the stages from one stage to another stage, right? As if I am part of a SOC team, right? So the main motivation was for the audiences to feel that they are working in a real SOC environment when they go through this learning path. That helps retain them the knowledge for a longer time. So that was the biggest motivation for me to do this.
So I do have one reminder here. I just got a question in chat. So number one, thank you for asking questions in chat. To access today's content, learning path content, go to wwt.com, select my account at the top right, my event, select today's event, and you'll see a resource tab within that event. So wwt.com, my account, my event, resource tab, and you can access the learning path that Shoaib is going to walk us through today. I have one more questions on context, because when I executed this lab, Shoaib, it is structured very different than any lab I've executed on wwt.com. It has personas.
That's right.
I really got to see, I'll call it the attacker and the defender, and I got to see that picture from two sides. So can you kind of give us or set the stage to the personas you had in mind when you outlined this lab?
Yeah, I mean, the question could not have come at a better time, Brandon. I was about to go to the topology diagram, and what better way to talk about personas than use a topology diagram to tie it up onto the right?
I love pictures. They're worth 1,000 words. They make life so much easier.
Exactly. So I'm with you on that, right? So as you can see, the topology diagram that we are using for today's lab environment, or for that matter, for the entire learning path, is a consistent topology that we use, right? So the topology diagram is divided into several zones, like management zone, attacker zone, as you would have in a real SOC environment, right? And each of these zones are hosting specific machines, right? For let's take an example for the attacker zone. The attacker zone is hosting a well-known attacker machine called as Kali Linux, right? So Kali Linux comes already deployed with a lot of resources that a red teamer can use to leverage and launch attacks on any of the environment. So that's the reason we are using Kali Linux, right? And the red team persona that we have today in the lab environment is Riley. So Riley, whether you call it as a bad guy or a good guy, on which side of the spectrum you are, right? So Riley is the one who is launching attacks on the Active Directory, attacks like Kerberoasting, pass the hash attacks, right? And you have a persona called as Alex, which is your tier 2 SOC persona in a blue team environment, right? So Alex is kind of correlating all the telemetry and catching all the attacks that Riley is doing on the Active Directory environment, and kind of trying to do the triage. And at the same time, we also have a persona called as Tyler, right? So Tyler is again your tier 2 persona, but here Tyler is responsible for the NDR, network detection response type of tool, in which we are using security onion. So together, Alex and Tyler, they are doing the triage, correlating the telemetry, and try and build a defense in that kind of strategy here.
For those that aren't familiar with security onion, it is an open sourced firewall. This could be a Palo Alto, this could be a Fortinet, but in today's world, or in the scope of this lab, it's an open source firewall if you're not familiar with that component.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's an open source tool that encompasses several other tools within it, right? So it has your Zeek, which is a protocol analyzer. It also has your what you call Suricata, which is an IDS IPS, which works on signature-based detections, right? It also has several connection tools which identify your network traffic. So I mean, I wanted to blend the environment and use the enterprise tool like CrowdStrike and blend it with the open source tool with security onion, right? Together they can form what is called as XDR, one performing the network layer detection and another performing the identity and the EDR kind of stuff. So that's the intention here. Yeah, that's all about the topology diagram. Do we have any questions on the lab launch or the topology before we head into the actual lab execution?
No, let's dive right into the live execution. Looks like everybody's launching the lab. I can see most people are in it and going. So if you don't mind, let's slip over to the ATC gateway and begin walking through the lab.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. So I'll just close this window, right? So assuming everybody was able to launch the lab, you should be able to come to this window wherein your lab guide will be on the left-hand side and your execution environment, which is a Windows jump box, will be on the right-hand side of the environment, right? If needed, you can toggle between the buttons. Let's say if you have a two-screen monitor at home and you want more real estate to navigate through the lab, you can simply click on this arrow mark and have your execution environment expanded out, or you can also click on this arrow and have the lab guide expanded out separately, so you can have lab guide on one screen and you can have your execution box on another screen. Just for the ease of it, I will have in this layout, right? Before we dive into the lab environment and start executing all those malicious kind of activities, I want to put a security disclaimer here, right? So this is the offensive technique wherein we are performing real attacks like Kerberoasting and pass the hash. So this is only for lab environment purposes. Do not perform this at your production environment, right? Without any authority. So like I mentioned, today we will be discussing about identity attacks using ITDR, Active Directory Module, and Riley is our red team operator. If I talk about the learning path, right, the learning path starts with module one, wherein we are talking about the EDR, XDR stuff and performing phishing attacks, right? So that's the thing, all this attack starts from module one until module four. And in module four, we are at a level where we are performing credential access kind of attacks, right? So let's verify the lab environment quickly, right? If you go through the lab guide, so the automation that we had running in the background changed the host name for all the hosts and also for the Active Directory. So that should be done. And we have already applied the Falcon policies, right? So it also installed the Falcon agents within all the hosts, and all the policies were all pre-deployed to the environment. So let's go with this. You can click on this, log into the CrowdStrike. Some of this should be auto-populated for you. Since I remember the password, I will not log, but for you, you can refer the info section wherein you can look for the password of the Falcon and then log in, right? This is the dashboard that you will be presented with, and the section that we're interested is in host setup and management. Go to the host dashboard and click on recently installed sensors. And if you take a look, right, this is your deployment ID, and M4 is a module name. So all the hosts will come up with a deployment ID. So for our case, what we can do is search with the host name equals, either you can search for your host name or you can type in the host name yourself. For the ease of it, I'll just type in 483.516, right? So it is.
So while you type that in, I just want to provide a little bit of clarification. So what is happening behind the scenes is a lot of the components that Shoaib shared on that diagram are built inside the ATC in our what we call it as our vCloud environment, our virtual environment. The CrowdStrike Falcon is a SaaS offered product. So the automation Shoaib mentioned is creating tenants, creating user access. So everybody will get their own individual lab copy as they launch it. And you'll get that lab copy for roughly 30 days as part of the event. So you can go through it. What you're going to kind of see in just, you won't have the ability to impact the other consumers of the lab. So I wanted to kind of walk through a little bit of what the automation is doing in the background. Is we're blending what I'd call on-prem lab with the SaaS provided Falcon console in the lab.
Yeah, that's a good call out, Brandon. So we see that, hosts are already present in the CrowdStrike Falcon. So the automation has worked perfectly, and when the agents were deployed, and we can see those hosts inside of the CrowdStrike platform in the EDS section, right? So next is to log into the security onion and make sure the modules are the one that we are going to be using. Oh, sorry. Lab. You can copy and paste. Just a small call out, right? I mean, if you run into some issues with the copy and paste from the lab guide to the host environment, from to the jump box, I would recommend you going through using a Google Chrome browser, because that's the one that I have seen provide the best experience with respect to the copy and paste. So please use Google Chrome. So you can see Zeek is already running, which is the protocol analyzer that we will be using, and Suricata is also running, which is your IDS IPS that we will be leveraging in the lab, right? And we already verified this, verify Falcon sensor. We already saw that Falcon sensors are there. Verify endpoints. Okay, let's go ahead and log into the web UI of the security onion, right? So yeah, this one has a bigger password, so I will have to take a look. Log in, and once you are in Security Onion, you can just click on Elastic Fleet, and we are going to be verifying that our host machines are visible in Security Onion so that they can push all the telemetry to the Security Onion as well.
Yep. While you're doing that, there's a couple comments going on in chat. So walk us through the credentials you just used for Security Onion. So those are what's being created dynamically for everybody through automation. You're just using copy and paste from the blue screen that pops up here into the Security Onion GUI?
Yeah. So just click on the info section of the lab. So if the automation has run in and everything got created correctly as the way it should be, you should see all the credentials popping up in the in the info section of the lab. But if you have just launched the lab, it's going to take at least 5 to 7 minutes for the automation to complete before you can see the screen. So that's the thing. Give it like 5 to 7 minutes if you have just launched the lab. But if you have launched the lab prior, and if you're still not able to see, I can take a look at what's going behind the scenes and rerun the job for you so that you can get the credentials, right?
Thank you, Shoaib.
Hope that. Yeah. So now you can see we have Active Directory here, and we have both the hosts. So everything health-wise, everything looks good for the lab environment. As a good analyst, you would come in and note on everything. Yeah, host names assigned, Falcon sensor reporting, Security Onion running, Elastic Fleet healthy. So now you have gone through the checklist and made sure everything is set up as it should be. Now we go into the main action of the lab.
Let me articulate that back to you real quick. From a non-cybersecurity expert here, I have CrowdStrike Falcon running and working. I have Active Directory in the environment working, running. I won't say it's in the most secure state, but running. And then I have my firewall and my protocol analyzer all working. So I guess my infrastructure is up and my monitoring is up. Is that what I'm hearing here from the non-cybersecurity point of view?
That is absolutely right. And let's go back to this topology diagram, right? So all this environment is now sending your monitoring traffic to the CrowdStrike through the Falcon sensors that we have installed. And we have also installed sensors for Security Onion. Whatever is going on within this environment is been sent out to the Security Onion through this monitoring port. So Security Onion is listening for all the traffic in a tap mode. So that's all is ready for now, So the lab environment is ready for the live action.
Perfect. Let's get it. Let's get into it. Let's take that compromised machine and let's see some lateral movement.
So we start with step 2, which is basically the credential access, right? So just to give you the context of the adversary kill chain from our previous labs. So this is a continuation, it comes from your lab 1, lab 2, lab 3, lab 4, right? So in lab 1, lab 2, lab 3, we went through the phases like reconnaissance, initial access, execution, and persistence. And we were able to use a tool called as a responder and grab the credentials for a domain user called as victim 01. That's where we start our attack, right? So we have already compromised the victim 01, and we have the credentials for them, and we will be using Impacket tool, and specifically the secretsdump.py. So Impacket is a library of a Python collection, which is well known within the Red Teamer environment, and it is used to, exploit Active Directory a lot. So that's the reason we are using Impacket here, right? So we're going to be using secretsdump.py, a module of the Impacket with the compromised credentials, and see what we are going to get from our a compromised host, which is your victim O1, right? So we are targeting victim O1 using secretsdump.py. So let's copy this and open your attacker machine, Kali attacker, and log into it. All right, so let's copy this and right click, paste, and hit enter. So what this is doing is this is authenticating using NTLM to the SMB interface of the Windows machine that was compromised earlier, and it is dumping all sorts of NTLM hashes, right? So it is dumping your local hashes, it is dumping your machine hashes, and also your domain credential hashes, right? So that's the thing. So once we have this, one of the common flaw that you might see in environments is the reuse of the credentials, right? And we have set up our Active Directory in such a way that it demonstrates that, right? So it's using compromised credentials, reuse of the credentials, and that's why we are going to be leveraging WMI-exec. And as you can read from here, in a real attack environment, the attacker, cycles through all the valid credentials that they can find. But just in the interest of time, we know which credentials the attacker is going to be leveraging. So we'll be using the lab user credential here. So if you can take a look, this is the one that we will be using, lab user, if I can highlight it correctly.
And this is exactly where your public service announcement came into play. Do not run these against any sort of production environment or anything you have. This is to simulate malicious activity. Thank you.
Let me clear it out so I can have bigger real estate to work through, right? So copy the next command. And if you see here, now we are launching our attacks on the Active Directory, no more on the, the whole compromised machine, right? So you can see the IP address change, 192.168.2.3. So we are trying to use WMI-exec and reuse one of the compromised credentials from the host and see if we are going to get lucky with respect to the Active Directory login, right? So this is going in, and boom, you can see that we were able to get a Windows prompt here.
This was, you mentioned it, this was the aha moment for me to see the prompt change from Kali Linux to now I'm at a C. And if you don't mind, go ahead and do a DIR, because this is where my mind was a little bit blown, going, welcome to the Windows world. We just moved laterally in the environment from the Linux KaliSec VM over to the Active Directory server. So to me, this was the realization that made a lateral movement with an environment real. To see that prompt change, for some reason, it made it go bing in my head.
Yeah, let's see what we have discovered, right? So the command that came to your mind was dir, Brandon. So let's run dir. There you go, right? I have few more commands here, like who am I?
Very Windows commands. Very Windows looking from here.
System info and all that stuff, right? So feel free to run whatever command that comes to your mind. We were able to, launch an attack and get into the Active Directory prompt, right? And as you can see, we were able to compromise into the Windows Active Directory environment using Impacket and some of the credential stuff attacks, right? Analyst tip is basically how you can prevent this attack. You can use LAPS. LAPS is basically is a security setting within the Active Directory that assigns unique passwords, local passwords to all the endpoints within the Active Directory environment, right? And you can also hunt for identical NTLM hashes, because these NTLM hashes tend to be same for the same passwords. So you can take a look. If you have identical NTLM hashes, then there's quite a lot of probability that you are reusing the credentials, right? So I will log out from here.
And as you walk through this lab yourself, going through home, I know we're going rather quickly. So again, if you launch this lab, you'll have the lab for 30 days. You can kind of walk through it. If you have ideas of what you would love to see as far as inspirational content going into the future, please drop those in chat. I'd love to give Shoaib some, call it inspiration or feedback on where he could take this particular lab into the future.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brandon. So we are now going to MITRE attacks techniques, right? Let's see here. I will be going out of the lab environment. Just clicking on just to show you some of the techniques, right? So one of the technique from this step was credential dumping, and how can you correlate that technique here? Let's see. You go to the mitre.org. You go to the credential access, and once you go to the credential access section, so MITRE is basically a community knowledge base which tells you, like, gives you stuff like tactics, techniques, and procedure. It gives you mapping into the adversary brain. What techniques did they use to launch the attack, so that your blue teamer can perform identical triage, right? So the technique we use was credential access, and then credential dumping and security account manager. If you click on this, you can see what this technique means, what were the tools that were leveraged, and all that stuff. So feel free to read it when you have time. It's a really good knowledge base on the adversary mindset. So moving next, I'll take a pause here and see if we have any questions before moving to step 3, which is the exciting part where we will be simulating Kerberoasting.
Yeah, no questions at this time. Keep going on.
Cool. So our attacker here, Riley, already compromised the Active Directory environment and was able to get into the Active Directory, right? What is next? Now we will be doing something called as Kerberoasting. Kerberoasting is a technique wherein you will target accounts that have service principal names attached to it, right? And the idea is to leverage this technique and request for ticket granting service and get the dump, and basically use technique like John the Ripper, and then see if we can crack the service account password, right? So that's what we are doing here. So next is we are requesting a TGS ticket, right? And then you can see that we are using the same NTLM hash that we were able to compromise from the previous step and targeting the Active Directory. Once you hit enter, I think it copied the previous command. It did not copy this. Okay, let me see. Yeah, you can run into this sometimes, copy and paste. Okay, there you go. This is the right command. There you go. So you were able to see that we were able to get the Kerberos hash KRB TGS. So this is that ticket granting service, and we were able to get it for the two service accounts. All right. And once you are in here, let's copy that into a file called as SVC web hash, so that we can use tools to crack it later. So if you take a look into the contents of the SVC web hash, it's the same stuff that we saw earlier, right? So that basically helps us to get the Kerberoasting tickets within our environment. Let's see if we can go ahead and crack these tickets, right? So the tool that we are using today is John the Ripper, right? So John the Ripper is a cracker tool which cracks your NTLM hashes, right? So let's go ahead and cat the file. You can see 2 tickets, right? And then we are using John the Ripper.
Yep. So before you jump on here, because I think we're going a little bit quick, there's 2 different service accounts on the Active Directory server, a SQL backup and a web app service account. And that was the hash you were showing us there.
Yeah, thank you for the context, Brandon. So like Brandon mentioned, we have 2 service accounts and we are using John the Ripper. There you go, boom, right? We were able to get the service account for the SQL service, which is SQL Backup 2025. Very intuitive. No one could have guessed it. And it's summer of 2007.
So is that summer of 2000? That's the password then for that SQL account, correct?
Yeah, so SQL Backup 2025 is the password for the SQL account, and summer of 2007 was the password for your web app service.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, there you go. So if you refer from the analyst tip, right, Kerberoasting again maps to the My3 technique, right, and it uses the technique T155803. So feel free to navigate through the My3 mapping technique and try and correlate what we did here, right? So I just have one service listed here, SVC web app, which was cracked, but we did crack two service SQL backup as well. So next, the idea behind cracking this service accounts was to use the service accounts in doing lateral movement, right? And that's what we're going to be doing here, lateral movement. Copy this and let's see what happens. So there you go. We were able to log in using those credentials, but something happened. We were not able to get the interactive login, right? So that is one of the security measure, right? So these Windows endpoints, they do not allow a log on to the service accounts. And one of the security measure which might have happened is service accounts did not have the privileges to do an interactive login. That's why we were never able to log in. But it did succeed in authenticating. So this was 3.2, which is your endpoint one. Let's try the Active Directory. Maybe you can copy and paste it correctly. There you go. It will not succeed. You have another endpoint in here, which is 3.4. So let's try and see if we can get into that. See, there you go. So this service accounts lack the interactive login. That's why we were never able to get in, right? So this concludes all the attacks that we had planned for Riley. Now you will be moving from the attacker hat and you will be donning the hat of the blue teamer, which in my sense is a good guy because I relate myself to the blue team, right? So now we will be moving into the blue team environment.
Can you bring up your diagram? Let's show everybody the diagram here to help kind of solidify here. So red was Riley, who launched two different types of Active Directory attacks from the red all the way over into the yellow subnet there.
Yeah.
And we're going to be moving on to Alex or Tyler. Which one are we going to take a look at first?
So we'll be taking a look at the Alex first. We'll be launching into the CrowdStrike platform. Once we are able to see everything that CrowdStrike has to offer, then we'll go into the Tyler and log into the security onion, right? So this is how the traffic flew in, right? So Cali attacker and was compromising the Active Directory and also the internal workstation. And while that was happening, all that telemetry was being imported to security onion as well as to the CrowdStrike. Right. So let's log in and take a look and see what we can find. So first step will be to log into the CrowdStrike. I'll just close this out. So we have so click on the CrowdStrike tab at the top, right? You should be able to get the login ID and password. And once you are in here, you should be able to see the screen. So first thing we'll be doing is domain control sanity check. That is to identify whether your domain control is listed correctly within the active ITDR module, and if it is correctly showing all the telemetry. So you go to identity protection, you go to configure, and then within configure domain controller host, right? Once you're in here, try and find your Active Directory controller here. So it will be coming with your deployment ID. So my deployment ID, if I go through, was 483516. It might be somewhere here. You can filter it out. I don't have the real estate here, but you can filter it out with the host name. Like you can click here and filter with the host name, right? So you can do that. So it should be listed in here 48135116. See, there you go. So this is my Active Directory, which I can see, and the status is active. That means it is healthy, and you can see that traffic inspection is enabled, Kerberos detection is enabled, right, and NTLM detection is enabled. Again, this policy is tuned so that you can see other detections, but in a production environment, The policy will go in three phases, goes from detection and then from monitoring, and then it will go into something called as blocking, where it is called as enforcing, right? But for the sake of the lab, we did not put the policy into the enforcing mode because we wanted to show you all the telemetry, right? And you can see the policy that is attached to it, TDIR identity. So it all looks good. It all looks healthy. So our Active Directory environment is properly registered and showing correctly, right?
So, hey, Shoaib, I'm not super familiar with CrowdStrike. I assume there's some sort of agent installed on that domain controllers or into the compromised Windows PCs that are reporting it back. Is that true?
That is right. And that's part of the automation that we have run before launching the lab, right? And if you want to learn how to install that sensor, what that sensor looks like, what are the steps, you would have to take the fundamental learning path, because that was part of the fundamental learning path that we designed through. All right. So you can certainly go there and see how to install that agents. Yeah, but you're right. That agent is sending all the telemetry. It's just one same agent deployed everywhere. So next step is review identity detection. For that, you would go to identity protection, dashboard and detections. Identity protections, dashboard and detections. So this will show you all the detections for that particular Active Directory environment, right? So the lab guide says the one which we are looking for is suspicious LDAP, Kerberos misconfiguration, because we launched a lot of Kerberos attacks, right? And you can see that suspicious LDAP, Kerberos misconfiguration, it gives you the user was lab user. And in order to view the detection, you will have to click on view detection. It gives you a lot of beautiful graphs as well, detection by objectives, detection by, let's say, status, severity, and all that stuff, right? And what kind of detections were there, which users launched the attacks. You can see all that stuff in the dashboard. But for now, let's click on the view detection because we want to explore deeper into one particular attack, right? And you can see stuff like tactic and techniques. If you ask me where did this come from, this came from the My3 community dashboard that we were referring, right? So CrowdStrike maps directly into the My3 tactics and techniques, right? So it shows you could be perform credential access, and the intention was basically to steal or forge the Kerberos tickets, right? And you can see like account name was lab user, source endpoint. If you navigate through a lot of this stuff, you will be able to gather it very easily. The dashboard is very intuitive in nature. It's very easily readable. You just have to scroll through the sections and then gather all these details that is relevant to your environment. And if you want to get help from your agentic response using your AI workflows, you can just click on the agentic response and it will start building everything for you. What type of attack was. So here it will start asking questions itself and starts responding. But this is not part of the lab that we have built out. It's just good to know for now, right? So if you click on agentic response, and click on investigate, it will start asking questions and it will start responding on its own. And it will take you to the level where you can confidently say, yes, this was the problem that caused this breach, right?
So this is probably one of my favorite parts of that. What you did differently creating this lab compared to some of the other labs I've seen is the Falcon console is filled with real alerts. We had Riley initiate the attack, and now we're seeing Riley's activity, very cause and effect feel. So this is Riley launched the attack. Now I get to see it in Alex's view. So this is very cause and effect from people. This is one of the things I love, that these aren't fake alerts in the console. We generated it minutes before.
Yeah, and that was one of the challenging part, modulating the environment so that I can have repeatable alerts every time the attack is launched. So there were some challenges building this learning path, but it was all worth it, I guess. Yeah. Once you do that, analyze the active domain security overview. Let's go quickly to the domain security overview. So domain security overview will give you the complete health view into the health of the Active Directory, right? Let's go quickly. Identity protection, domain security overview. Here you have two important things. One is the goal and other is the scope. So the scope is basically the domain itself, right? So the domain that we are using within this lab environment is threathunt.org. So let's change the scope from defense.local, since this is a common lab SaaS deployment copy of the CrowdStrike. Several other labs also use this, right? So let's change to the correct domain. It should be threathunt.org. There you go. We are here. And you can basically view this analytics depending on the goal. Let's say you want to do a AD hygiene, right? You click on AD hygiene, it says that the current hygiene of the Active Directory is 5.7, which is moderate, right? And the Active Directory is susceptible to poorly protected service account passwords, right? SPN, service principal names, and that's what we saw when we launched the attack, right? And if you want to see which service principal names are those, you can click on show related entities. And these were the two that we compromised, right? SVC web app and SVC SQL backup, right? So, and it also says you what you can do to protect them. It says remove the SPN service account. It will give you the risk, right? Something which is also of importance to note is Kerberos pre-authentication. This is your ASREP kind of attack. And if you click on this, you can see that it says some user accounts are permitted to obtain a ticket granting ticket, without authentication, which is still very relevant in some of the Active Directory environment because of the legacy applications. They tend to use this kind of configuration, right? Let's quickly click on the show related entities and see which accounts are there. So you basically have three accounts: tier 2 analyst, and attacker, right? So these are the accounts which were set up purposely to showcase the Kerberos pre-authentication. You see duplicated local administrator accounts. Lab user is used everywhere within the lab environment. So it was able to identify that, right? It says passwords not changed for 180 days, right? So that's for the AD hygiene. And if you click on penetration testing, it will give you the posture from the penetration testing side, right? So the penetration tester will be easily able to execute attacks like, that are like this, right? LDPS channel binding. You can see inadequate password policy because some of the passwords within the Active Directory that we have are set up never to expire. So it is able to detect that, right? You can also see privileged user accounts, which privileged user accounts were compromised, how many privileged user accounts we have. And it will also tell you how you can reduce the attack surface. So basically, it will give you a complete holistic picture into the Active Directory environment that you are monitoring. So domain security overview is the place to be to triage all the stuff that is related to your Active Directory ITDR posture.
Thanks, Shoaib. So we got about a little bit of a time check. We got about 10 minutes left here. So through this lab, you will explore many parts of the CrowdStrike Falcon Council, a different view. Do you mind taking a few minutes here? Let's jump over to Security Onion and Zeek to take a look at the firewall and the protocol analyzer to also see the same attacks start to resonate in those security tools.
Yeah, thanks for the time check, Brandon. Yeah, time just flies when you're having fun. So Security Onion, right? As I mentioned, it uses OQL queries. Let me quickly log into the Security Onion here. You click here, and once you are there, since I already logged in previously, it did not ask me for password. You go to the hunt screen, and then let's go ahead and try and see what we did, right? So what we are trying to do here is we are trying to correlate the attack we launched from the Kali Linux to the Active Directory to get the SVC web app credentials, right? So tag is Kerberos, which will bring all the Kerberos traffic in. So this is how it looks before. You can see all the Windows PowerShell and all those noise, right? So now what we are trying to do is we filter out tags Kerberos, and we are trying to look for ticket granting service type of ticket. The source is your Kali Linux. Then the destination user Active Directory, and we are trying to look for webapp.threathunt.org, right? So quickly hit enter, and let's see whether Security Onion was able to identify that traffic or not. And there you go, boom, right? So you can see that the protocol analyzer Zeek identified that as Kerberos traffic originating from Kali attacker on so and so port and going to your destination IP, which is your Active Directory, right? And it was ticket granting type of service. And if you expand into this alert, this will give you a whole lot more details as well, which you can take a look, right? Uh, you can also see the pass the hash traffic, copy and just paste it here. Just remove this query. So this is the NTLM traffic that we saw flowing across, right? So you can see a lot of NTLM traffic going from your attacker to your Active Directory. And that's what we are seeing here as well.
So what we're seeing here from both Security Onion and Zeek would be just considered common functionality. We'd be able to see this in a Checkpoint, a Cisco, Apollo, a Fortinet, what we're seeing. We just happen to use the open source variant. Is that true?
That is absolutely true. That is right. Yeah. Some of those tools operate in a very similar fashion. Yes.
Thank you.
So, yeah, you can log in and see how secret dumps were done, especially web app and Kerberoasting, right? So you can do some additional forensics as well using this technique, using Security Onion. I'll quickly move to the next section, which is the SOAR, Security Orchestration and Response. And this is the tool within CrowdStrike Falcon. So imagine this, right? When alerts start pouring in, when CrowdStrike starts detecting alerts, it has something called a SOAR functionality, which will start using playbooks. And for this alert, this action is performed. So that action is defined within the playbooks, right? Let's say you did a credential stuffing attack and a so-and-so credential like lab user was compromised. A playbook starts executing within the CrowdStrike Falcon environment, which will reach out back to the Active Directory and either log the account or either remove the account and perform all that remediation kind of steps. But the lab environment we have today does not allow us the functionality to perform this, but you can still read through and understand the overall flow, how the SOAR automation kicks in and provides the functionality and protection that you need. Moving ahead, just in the interest of time, this is document and report. So one of the main thing about doing the triage, you want to document what you observed, right? Either you can document it and keep, or you can escalate it to your next level, right? And that's the completion of the lab. You also have something called as Bloodhound. We are using Sharphound, wherein you can ingest the Active Directory to identify the various escalation paths, escalation metrics, right? So that's listed in the lab guide as well, and it gives you a step-by-step stuff here.
I think
that's all I have for the lab. I know I skipped the gun through several steps. The lab is so huge. I really apologize for not demonstrating complete stuff, but you can reach out back to me after the fact, after the call. If you have any questions or queries, I will be available here.
Yeah. Do you mind jumping back over to Learning Path here? I got a couple questions for you. So we did go through the lab quite a bit. There's a lot of activities to go through. Let's put it that way. What are some of the other labs or some of the other pieces of content inside this Learning Path that kind of accompany what we've done today?
So we have totally 5 modules within the learning path, right? So module 1 is advanced threat detection. You are using what you call malicious PowerShell techniques like phishing attacks. So you send an email, a phishing email within the environment. You click on the phishing email, and then all sorts of compromise attack starts. So that's about module 1. Module 2 is about SOC escalation and automated response. Within a SOC environment, how do you work within several silos, within several teams? That's what the module 2 says, and it uses tools like Metasploit to exploit the environment, namely victim 1 and victim 02, and showcase all that telemetry within the CrowdStrike, right? And module 3 talks about how you can use threat intel within CrowdStrike to track the adversary, right? So let's say where the traffic is coming from so and so region, right? You can cross-relate that telemetry using the threat intel. Module 4 is about identity attacks, like what we discussed. Module 5 is all about silencing the noise, right? One of the problem with the tools is, there's a lot of telemetry coming in. So legitimate alerts gets lost, and module 5 talks about how you can filter all the noise and just focus on the important alerts.
Thank you.
So Yeah.
Do you mind flipping back over to your diagram? So while Shoaib flips back over to his diagram, I have a question. For anybody that's launching this lab or walking through this lab or frankly listening in today, what sort of components would you love to see added to this lab? Maybe it's pieces covered, activities covered. If we could give Shoaib some inspiration, like what content to develop in the future, what would it be? Please drop all your ideas on what you'd like to see into the WebEx chat. While they do, Shoaib, and I ask everybody who comes on the Hands-On Live Lab series here, while you were building this, what was your biggest aha moment, your biggest surprise of, I did not expect it to work this way, do that, or just the things that made you say, hum?
Yeah, I mean, I was blown away when I was able to see the amount of telemetry that CrowdStrike provides, right? So I was like, let's go ahead and see what ITDR module is all about. But then when you combine ITDR with your endpoint detection and response, you'll get a complete picture out of it, right? And then you use Security Onion and see the network traffic. You can basically visualize everything what's going out, and then I was able to see all that traffic flow in front. So that was an aha moment for me. For sure.
I get it. When I walked through this lab myself, I had the very similar. I'm a network background, and we always talk about network segmentation. And the moment I seen that prompt in your SSH window change from a Linux prompt to a Windows prompt, I went, I've seen it. I have seen lateral movement. I understand network segmentation. So my network brain kind of had the aha moment walking through from a cybersecurity world. So again, I appreciate everybody's time joining. Shoaib, thank you for joining today and walking us through the lab. This recording will be available on wwt.com and will eventually find its way to YouTube on the Worldwide Technology page. So please take a look at those for the recordings. Everybody will have access to the lab via the event in your My account on wwt.com. So please, you can launch the lab, look through the learning path. If you are a customer, you can go to wwt.com/labs and find the entire learning series, as well as all the other labs and learning series out there to walk through. One other personal ask is you will receive a survey after today's event. Please take a few moments to fill out the survey. What did you think of the live lab today? Or what are some things you would like to see going forward into the future? We'd appreciate your feedback. We will be back with another episode of Hands-On Live Lab October 30th to talk about Microsoft Zero Trust. Email invites and posting on wwt.com will come soon. So again, that is on October 30th, Microsoft Zero Trust. Thank you, everybody joining. I appreciate your time today. Have a great day.